One of the inyanim we've been learning lately in Kolel, darchei, is Siman Kuf Tzadikei. Dvarim ha'asurim b'zman nidaisa, whatever nikud you want to use for that. Things that are asur when she's a nida, when a wife is a nida, what we call today Harchakos. Now, one of the discussions, one of the inyanim in this siman, in this topic, is the question of what to do, what's the halacha if he's sick or she's sick. So I don't want to necessarily discuss this directly, because I think that as a general topic, the inyanim, the issues involved are fairly well known, fairly worked out in many svarim. But I want to touch a little bit on some of the underlying ideas that come up in these discussions, which I think may be of interest, even in regards to other topics and other contexts. So in the Tur Yeridea, Siman Kuf Tzadikei, so the Tur's, the way he addresses the topic is, he says, my father, the Rosh, writes in a tshuva, that if he, the husband, is sick, and the wife is a nida, and there's no one else to take care of him except for her, which is of course always a key detail in these discussions, so she can, mutaras l'shamshu, she can take care of him, but she should avoid washing his face, his hands, his feet, or making the bed. Because apparently these are the types of things that are considered more suggestive, perhaps, than the other things. So that's something you still want to avoid. So the Tur, the Rosh, they're only focusing, though, on a scenario, on a case, a situation where the husband is the one who's sick. Of course, she's always the one who is the nida. So I want to focus on a very chashuv, a very important source that is a very central marker on these discussions. And we'll see there are a number of interesting points that come up here. So the tshuva of the Radbaz in Chelik Daled, Siman Beis, otherwise known as Siman Aleph Ayin Vav. I don't have to introduce the Radbaz every single time we mention him. So the Radbaz says, Reuven and his wife are in hiding. Doesn't have to say why. Apparently it's normal enough that people find themselves in hiding. And there's no one there, of course, to care for them, to help them. They're in hiding. And now she's sick, and she's a nida. So this time she's the one who's sick. So the shaila was, can the husband touch her? By which we mean, can he help her lie down? Can he help her get up? Can he help her lasis Shraga, take care of her needs? And let's say he has some medical knowledge, he's a reifei. Can he take her pulse? Lamashish la hadoifek. If back then bloodletting, till not that long ago, till 150 years ago, let's say, bloodletting was still a very common practice when someone was unwell, so if he has expertise in that, is that something he can do for her? And would it matter whether it's a chayli sheyesh beisakana or a chayli shein beisakana? Does the amount of danger involved matter? So the Rabbi starts off by saying, l'chayra, it would seem that it's asur. Afilu liga bo be'etzba ktana, even to touch a pinky. And this is in fact what the Tumas Hadeshin, he says, this is what the Tumas Hadeshin, Rabbi Yisrael writes in the Sefer Tumas Hadeshin. So let's first take a look directly in the Tumas Hadeshin, Simulation on Beis. And among other things, there's a lot of interesting type of, obviously you could read it as a halachic discussion, but you could also read it as a bit of an analysis as to the dynamics between husband and wife, as we'll see. So the Tumas Hadeshin has the same question, what if she's the one who's sick, the husband wants to touch her to help her? Those types of things. Is it okay or not? The Tumas Hadeshin said, Asr liga ba filu be'etzba ktana, not even a pinky. Then he says, it says in Yeridea, by which he means the Tur, which was already around, and there was no Shulchan Aruch, so you didn't have to say Tur, you could just say, it says in Yeridea of the Tur, that the Rosh writes in a tshuva, etc., etc. So it sounds like it is mutter, as we quoted before. Right? It says, mutaras l'shamshay. So he's not being mechalik yet between who's the chayla here. So Tumas Hadeshin says, first of all, maybe the Rosh meant, maybe the Tur meant that l'shamshoy, without touching, to hand him things, or any other shimush that involves another object, an intermediary. That's number one. Then the Tumas Hadashin says, and even if you're going to argue, no, the Rosh Taka meant, the Tur Taka meant, the Lakimre, Lashkivoi. And the reasoning for that would be, why is that mutter? Because it's not so affectionate, it's not chiba, like the more affectionate things, like washing the face and then making the bed. That's more intimate. That's not regular service. The other stuff is mili da'avdos. Even a servant might do those things. We still can't derive any heter from there to here. He's ill and she's healthy. It's fine. Why? Because what's the whole purpose of the Harchakos? Very balabatish geret. We want to ensure that it doesn't create a situation in which things get out of hand and which things escalate between them. She's a nida. They have to be careful. So he says, if that's what you're keeping in mind, so lo metrachten balabatish. If he's sick and she's healthy, so he's sick. So what are you going to be concerned about? What's he capable of doing? There's no hergel aveda. Ein yitzrei mesgaber alav. He's too weak to have a yetzer, to be aroused. And we know that in kishel adas el ritzoynoi, and it's not the norm when someone's that sick. What about her? Hergel aveda of her. She's also getting comfortable. She's also crossing some lines here. What about her? We're not concerned about her. The woman isn't the one who initiates. So she could, anything could be happening in her mind, but it doesn't matter. And even if she was tevas, she did initiate, we already said that he's not up to it. There's nothing to be concerned about. But if she's sick and he's healthy, which is the case we're talking about. So that was the Rosh's case. That's why we're more likely to say it's fine, even if you're going to say it means lakima or lashkivai. But in the case we're talking about now, where she's sick and he's healthy, we have a concern of hergel aveda. Maybe he's yitzrei mesgaber olav, and he'll talk her into it. She's sick. No. It's not going to stop him. He's not concerned how she feels one way or the other. And he says, we find similar in a Mishnah in Shabbos, Lo yochel hazavim hazava mipnei hergel aveda. So this idea of, you already see this concept of Harchakos with the zav and the zava. And there's a darchei there that says that he's not allowed to eat from what she ate, but she's allowed to eat from what he ate. He says, the darchei is alluding to the same concept. We only care if he's the one that's getting comfortable. He's the one that has the hergel aveda. If the hergel aveda doesn't affect him, it only affects her, in this case, depending who's eating from whom. So then we only care when it's him. Then he says, Chein hetek echad hagdolim b'shem gadol. He doesn't say the makar. I saw somewhere that it's the erches chayim b'shem the rashba. Also, if the woman is sick and the husband's the doctor, he's not allowed to take her pulse. So if that's what that gadol said, that he's not allowed to take her pulse, kol shekain here, because taking the pulse is not derech chiba, it's derech omnis, it's all professional. And even if that's not okay, so certainly more intimate things that are derech chiba. So the Tumas Hadashin, though, is basing it on the psychology of male-female interactions as to who's initiating, who's in control. He says, there's a Gemara in Ksubis that's seemingly explicitly fakert. It says that the Gemara is discussing a stira, a case of Avelis. In the case of Avelis, they're also not supposed to be together. In one place it's mashma that he has to stay away, he has to sleep separately. And elsewhere it's mashma that she can do a lot of regular, shimush for him, b'shamashim. So Zakta Gemara, kam b'avelis di day aser, kam b'avelis di da shari. When he's the aval, you have to be more concerned. You have to keep them away. He has to sleep somewhere else. When she's the aval, the avela, then we're less concerned. She can continue doing her regular business. We're not concerned that anything will happen. Zak Rashi, why? Why if she's the aval, then we're not concerned? Because even if Yiskaber Yitzrei Love, even if he's getting aroused, even the Avelos di Dohi, Eina Shemasle, she's the oval. She puts her foot down. She says, "No, I'm the oval. Excuse me." No, so it sounds like from here that if anything, it's for carrots. That when he's the oval, then he has to be a part. When she's the oval, she can decide yes or no. So Dr. Tumas Hadash and Shapi Yesh Lachalik b'Meniya da'Avelus or b'Meniya de'Tashish Koyach Haguf. He doesn't spell it out, but he says if da'Avelus, it's one thing. If she's limp and inactive, then there's more of a concern that she's not the one deciding, and he's the one deciding. And we'll see that Rabbi is about to restate it in slightly other words. So if he's sick, so Bekitzer from the Tumas Hadash, if he's sick or she's sick, then it's always up to him. So if he's sick, nothing's going to happen. If she's sick, we're more concerned. If she's an oval, then it's up to her actually. So back to the Rabbi. So the Rabbi cited this Tumas Hadashan, and he's Mesakim, he's Mekatze the Tumas Hadashan. The Tumas Hadashan introduced this chiluk between Chalahu and Chalsahi. If Chalahu mutter, Tashash Koichai. That fits with the Rosh. The Rosh was talking about him. But if Chol Sahi, then Aser, because Shema Yitzra is Gaber, she won't stop him, Sharei Tashash Kaicha. Because she's simply too weak to stop him, to stand in his way. And the Gemara in Ksubis fits nicely, because in the Gemara in Ksubis, Kivin Shehi Bekaicha, Leit Tishmaelov, she has her strength, so she's not going to listen. So this is how the Rabbi started off. He started off saying, it looks like it's us. So V'chein Heishiv Rabbi Yisrael. But now here the Rabbi returns with his own opinion. So the Rabbi, Lafi Ani Es Daiti. All of this, we're saying there's a difference. Hu Chayla, He Chayla. That's only when the question is whether, if there's no one else around in the house, no other family members that can do anything, the shayla would be now whether we have to hire someone else, hire another woman to take care of her. So if chalahu, if he's sick, so the Rosh and the Torah are saying that you don't have to hire someone to take care of him. And he wants to even be medayik from the Lashon. He says the Lashon is, Hu chayla ve'ein loy mi yishay yisham shanu. But loy ein, there's no one there. As it happens, the word loy is not in our Rosh or Torah, or Torah and Tumas Hadashan, but he's medayik from the word loy. And also Tumas Hadashan. Also, he says, look at the Tumas Hadashan. Isha shi chayla v'ratza ba'al ligaba. Sounds like ratza. It's optional. He wants to. So you want to? Sorry, you have to get someone else. So if he's sick, you don't have to hire. If she's sick, you have to hire someone. Ideally, you have other people in your family. You don't have, then the question will be whether you have to hire someone or not. If they're hiding, there is no other option. There is no one you can hire. There's nothing you can do. He's just going to leave her to die. darchei noam. Das ist nicht darchei noam, sagt der Radbaz. So I want to give a shtickle maimer amuzgar and focus a little bit on this concept of darchei noam and halacha. So we talk about darchei noam and the Radbaz, so we have to mention another very well-known Shiur of the Radbaz that I actually focused on directly last year. It's a famous shaila that originates in the Piskei Halachos of the Dikanti, or the Kanati, however you want to pronounce it. The shaila being, if the government, the shultan, says to a yid, either you let me cut off one of your limbs, non-life-threatening, or I'm going to kill another yid. That's from the Piskei Halachos of the Dikanti. Piskei Halachos says, Yesh oimnim shechayev. And the Radbaz responds to this, and he has a whole laundry list of reasons why. How could you say such a thing? How can you say he's chayev? So one of his many tainas that we went through last year is V'su d'ksiv darchei noam. And what does that mean? Dr. Radbaz, V'tzorech shemishpatei teiraseinu yiyu maskimim el haseichel v'hasvara. We require that the teachings of the Torah should seem very reasonable and logical and acceptable. And if you're telling me your pilpul is leading you to conclusions in which Torah ends up sounding unreasonable and illogical, then that's a raya that you made a mistake somewhere in your cheshbon. darchei darchei noam tzarich shemishpatei teirasenu yiyu maskimim el haseichel v'hasvara. So now that he says, ask yourself, you want to tell me that a person should allow himself to lose his eye or his arm or his leg so they shouldn't kill his friend? That's not darchei noam. So this is an interesting yesod, especially the way that Adbaz's words are there. So the question is, when does this work? How does this work? So I want to just go off a bit and focus. I saw someone, Sat Berkovitz, Ginas Veradim, issue Yudches from Ayin Gimel. So there's someone there, a younger man, his name is Baruch Miller, wrote a shtickle sort of going through some of the Makaidas on this topic. He starts off by being Magdir, that B'chlal, the underlying idea is that Torah doesn't want to cause harm, lead to harm. That's not supposed to be what Torah is about. And he's a quote in a moment from Harchakos. So he says, if we had to break down how darchei noam is used in halacha, there's really 4 categories, 4 ways in which you might hear darchei noam get invoked. So number 1, sometimes we're not sure what the Torah meant. The Torah said something, and we could either say it means this or it means that. So if one of them is darchei noam, the other one is not, so we say surely the Torah meant to go with the darchei noam option. Number 2, sometimes Torah says that there's a certain chiyuv that you might have, you're patur from this chiyuv. So even if there's a reason to say later that the chiyuv will return, we'll say no, it doesn't, darchei noam. 3, that if doing the mitzvah itself is a contradiction to darchei noam, if doing the mitzvah is going to cause tsar, there might be cases where we say your patur doesn't apply to you, darchei noam. And number 4, this lashon of the Rabbi, this concept that Torah has to be maskim al haseichel v'hasvara. So it begins by quoting Harchakos, Tzvi Chayes. I believe I've mentioned him before. Was an interesting Rav. He lived around the time of the Tzemach Tzedek in Galicia, and he was a mamutza. He was somewhere between From and Haskalah, in the sense that his svarim are still pretty ungenommen in the svarim stores today. But at the time, the Chassidim in Galicia felt that he was a little too declared for their taste. And the questions, you could see the questions that he's asking, the discussions, the topics that he's addressing, you could see that he's addressing more contemporary ways of thinking. He's writing in a more contemporary way. So he has many interesting svarim. One of them is called Mavaya Talmud. So Mavaya Talmud, Parak Tazayin, he says that he's trying to come up with principles in Chazal. So he says Chazal have an ikar gadol, a big principle, that the Torah does not want to decree anything that directly leads to a poor outcome for an individual, and certainly not for the klal. And based on this logic, you see that Chazal establish many dinim and halachas. Says, for example, when it comes to death penalty, and we know you're not allowed to just be light on criminals, achzarius, being cruel to criminals is good for everyone else, it's good for society. And yet, when it comes to the death penalty, Chazal learned from V'ahavta l'recha kamoecha, b'rar loy misa yafa. And wherever Chazal, and throughout Sanhedrin, wherever Chazal have a shayla as to how the misa is supposed to go, they'll invoke b'rar loy misa yafa, that we have to try to establish and ensure that it's kinder and gentler rather than harsher. So another example, Chazal learn mitzvah svara, that in Torah you have 2 things that you sort of toss away, things from the Beis HaMikdash that you sort of throw out into the wild. The tzipor of the mitzvah, you chase away the bird, and the sara mishtaleach, you throw it off a cliff. So you chase it away, you throw it off, and you walk away. There might be a shayla of me'ilah. If someone finds it, would they be allowed to use it? No, but how are they going to know? It's a bird. Anyone might find the bird, and anyone might find the animal. Lots of animals fall off cliffs. So Chazal say that's mutter b'hana. Why? Because the Torah wouldn't say that you should send something out, and then that would lead to a takala. So the same idea, the Torah wants to be nice to us. The Torah wants to help us. So yeah, the Torah would create a scenario in which it would surely lead to a takala. That's proof that can't be. Harchakos continues, he says, Chazal had a klal gadol, that the Torah is always looking out for Yidden's money. Torah chasam amaynim shel Yisrael. Torah is not here to load us, to weigh us down with expenses and with tirchas. So for example, when it comes to the shofar shall tainis, piv mitzupa kesef. So the question is, what about the shofar itself? Is it, so there's a range, it might be made out of precious metals. Gemara says, no, Torah chasna ma'amein shel Yisrael. Torah wouldn't do that. Also the kalpi, the goyel taka for the two seidim and Yom Kippur. What's it made out of? The Gemara says, ha-Torah chasna ma'amein shel Yisrael. Or that the Kohen Gadol uses one kind of macht instead of another one. Torah chasna ma'amein shel Yisrael. Not just the Mamayim Shal Yisrael, also the Gufa Shal Yisrael, Zeicha Tayr Azach, also important to the Torah. So the example of this is when it comes to the Daled Minim. Alright, all the Daled Minim in the Torah are not particularly clear. Their identity, what species they are is not particularly clear from the Torah. So when it comes to Pri Etz Hadar, Gemara says maybe the Pri Etz Hadar is the Hirduf. What's the Hirduf? The oleander. Rabbi says no, can't be. Darchei noam ksiv. What's wrong with it? Hirduf is prickly. It's a prickly plant. So imagine if the Pri Etz Hadar you had to take every sukkah was a cactus or something like that. Darchei noam. It's got to be an esrig, not a hirduf. And the Rava says emes v'asholem ahavu. It's also some amavas. Gemara Yavama says that. Woman's husband dies, they have a son. Okay, she's not chayev in Yibam Chalitza. She goes to get married. Now her son dies. No, so there's no one else Shem HaMeis anymore. So maybe she should be chayev in Yibam and Chalitza now. That would cause a big headache. Zakt the Gemara. No, darchei noam. That's how the Gemara concludes what the halacha should be. So the Maratz Chaya says, you see, all of these examples all are emerging from this big ikar, this big yesod, that the Torah is out for everyone's benefit. It's not here to make things difficult. And you have other rules. I know mitzvahs chavilas. We shouldn't be loading up too many mitzvahs at a time. It makes it too much of a masa. Ein mashkin shtei soitis, ein orfen shtei agalas, etc. We find, are we cherry picking? Are we being selective here in what we're choosing to represent from Chazal? Because the Gemara also says, mitzvahs lavli honest nitnu. Well, you think mitzvahs are here for your enjoyment, then are here for your enjoyment. And Rashi says, it's not lis anig, it's la'oil al tzavareyan. Don't get it wrong, that mitzvahs are here to be a yoke. So the Maratz Chayas, no. Chazal never meant to say that the Torah is just giving us random things and you need something to do, let me give you random tirchas to run around and do. Here's a bunch of things to keep you busy. That's nish beseder. The Torah wouldn't be like that. Even Bali Chayim, Tzar Bali Chayim, Rachum al Klamaisov, very big yesod in Torah. So, there's a purpose. The Torah is supposed to be making you a better person. There's a medrash that says, Hashem says, I didn't ask for karbanis from the woods, from the wilderness. Imagine if to get a carbon you had to go out to the mountains to start chasing wild animals. The Torah says, no, the medrash says the animals are accessible. And that's why we saw in all these other cases where we're not sure what the halacha should be, we're always machriya, or we were machriya in all these cases. So what's the word of lavli honest nitnu? That's partial legabe shaylas of me'il. What's the context? The context is if you do a mitzvah and you also are, this issue of me'ila, or maybe there's you're neider hana, you said I'm not to have hana. Now by doing the mitzvah I'm going to have that hana that I said I'm not to have. So Dr. Gemara, mitzvah's lavli honest nitnu. It's not for hanas haguf. You're not supposed to be enjoying the mitzvah. No one ever claimed that every mitzvah will be a pleasurable and enjoyable experience. So you can say, lavli honest nitnu, you're doing the mitzvah. Right now you're not enjoying what you're doing, you're just doing the mitzvah for the mitzvah. But of course, the mitzvah is still there for a purpose. You'll have schar, whatever the outcome is. And then he ties in also mitzvah tzrichas kavana or ein tzrichas kavana. He says, if you say, if if you say Ein Tzrichas Kavana, so he says maybe that's taka, maybe that's if you subscribe to the idea that the ikar is that you're already doing the mitzvah. It is a shtickle oil. So the fact that you're already being matriach and doing the mitzvah, you already accomplished what you need to accomplish. That was the kavana. So Ein Tzrichas Kavana, you accomplished by taking time out of your day to do it. But if you hold that there's a purpose, tzrichas kavana, you have to have the purpose in mind. You have to be doing the mitzvah for the right reason. And he continues a little bit more in this vein. That's the darchei. So back to this fellow who was mesakim, how darchei is used in halacha. So we said, so one category says we're not sure what the Torah meant. What's the example of that? Like we said, the dalad minim. The Gemara has shilas, but other minim of the dalad minim as well. And that's part of the shakla v'tayim in the Gemara, darchei. The second category we said was that once you're potter from something, we're not going to make you chayav later. So by that he means the examples like we said, like the darchei said, where she's potter from chalitza and then the son dies, now we're going to bring the chiyuv back, darchei. Other examples as well from achrayim. The third category, he said, the way he was mounted, the third category is that the only way to do the mitzvah would cause tsar. Quotes a Marshal. Marshal says that based on Tosfos, based on how this is applied in halacha, that divrei Torah is supposed to be akoil b'noam umezek hashav. It's supposed to be pleasant and fair, and it shouldn't lead that one should be distraught and the other one should be happy. So, for example, there's a Rosh. Chuvas Rosh says, why you not be mazik your? Why you have to be mazik chaveirei? So he says, darchei. So that's why you have to respect your friend's property. And you can't say, it's my property, whatever I'm doing is within my property. No, whatever you're doing is harming someone else. Another interesting example he says is Hassan Sefer, Siman Chav Gimel. Hargasha by Nida, right? So he says, have Taris, to have two in Yanim and Halacha where Nida is relevant, Taris and Nisha Labayla. When it comes to Taris, you don't need Hargasha. Comes to Isha Labayla, you need Hargasha. Why do we have this distinction? So he says, Nira li de'ef shaleimer d'recha darchinayim ksiv. And the Rambam holds that even touching Ishtei Nida is Asr min HaTorah, even shaloi b'derech chiba. So if a woman could become a Nida without Hargasha, so she could be a Nida at any moment. So either he's going to touch her and then he'll find out that she was a Nida and then he'll feel bad. Or he's going to stop touching his wife ever, because at any moment she could be a nida. It's disastrous. So Yifresh mimena b'chaleis. So the Torah added Hargasha, d'recha darchinaya. And now, okay, if she has Hargasha, then there's a problem. If there's no Hargasha, you assume things are fine. Another example he finds of this is the Meshech Chachma. The Meshech Chachma says, why are men mitzuvah piravidivya and women are not? So he says, for a man, the investment of a man is minimal. A woman is a tremendous risk to her health, to her body. As we've been discussing at great length, the potential dangers a woman might find herself in. So it's not fair to come to a woman and tell her, you're mechuyev to do this. It's her woman's choice, ultimately, generally, whether she wants to become pregnant or not. And a woman, if she wanted never to give birth, should be allowed to drink something that would prevent her from conceiving. How's society going to work like that? So on the other hand, the Torah, the Eibishter is sort of implanted biologically that a woman has a desire to be a mother. The woman has a desire to have children. So the danger is offset by the woman's motherly instincts to want to have children. Like we see Rachel said, Havali banim v'mayin mesa anaychi. So the Eibishter can do that. The Eibishter can put that biological drive, but the Eibishter is not going to come and force women to bear children. And he says it stems nicely that Rav Yosef says in Perek Abba Yevimtei that how do we know that women are not mitzvahs and piravidivya? Because it says, with Yaakov, Ani kel shindal yod, prei urvei. Pru uravu is Lashon Rabbim. Prei urvei is Lashon Yachid. He only addressed it to Yaakov. Prei urvei, not pru uravu. So we see that women we're not mechuyev.
Smashen came with Adam and Chava. Adam and Chava, it does say Pruruvu. Why does it say Pruruvu with Adam and Chava? Because Adam and Chava is Kaidem Achet. Kaidem Achet, she wasn't B'tzar Tel Dibanim. Bearing children would be effortless. So you could say Pruruvu, you can come with Tviyah to Chava to have children. But once the Chet happened, and now it's B'tzar Tel Dibanim, and Reiv Pametz Sakana, and Akadikach, we say that the woman swears she'll never be with her husband again, and that's why you have to bring a carbon after a niddah, etc., etc. That's why it's prayer revei. By Noach it says prayer revu, but it says earlier Noach v'ezbanov. So prayer revu lashon rabim is only to Noach and Banov. It doesn't mention the women. So the prayer revu plural is only to the men and not to the women. Azay kumtais, very nice, very cute. The fourth category is this lashon of the Radbaz, maskimim ala seichel v'hasvara. Even if you don't have the other three reasons, but just seichel alone tells you that something's wrong here, this outcome doesn't seem right, we'll find in Torah that we say that it's not true, it's not the case. She brings the Radbaz from cutting off a limb, where the Radbaz says, not maskim ala seichel v'hasvara. Brings from Kitzer Piskei Nida, the Rosh says, why is there taka no yichud? Why is there no yisur yichud between a husband and his wife who's a niddah? Dr. Rosh, that the reason is that for this reason. How are you gonna avoid? What kind of outcome are you suggesting? Well, are you proposing? And then he brings this Radbaz that we're talking about, where the ishta is a niddah v'chayla. It's the chadar. We know what shechenesh etamos. And mistame. One could separately go through all the Rebbe's sichos and igros, etc., and see how the Rebbe uses the term darchei noam, often in a less halachic sense, but more as a tone that how one should conduct oneself and present oneself. But Mistama also in halachic context as well to some extent, but that's for a different time. I'll just point out that recently Rav Shraga gave a shiur about the tzemach tzedek, about the sugar and the blood. So if you look at the tshuva, so the Tzemach Tzedek on his own says that there's blood in every sugar, no matter where, at that time in the Russian Empire, every sugar has blood in the process. Elamai, you're going to have to say that the dam is bottle. You're going to tell me he says, if every sugar has the same problem anyway, so what's the? I'm going to tell you not to do it yourself, but buy the other sugar. The other sugar also has it. The guy did it. The guy was a vatal lechatchila. So, what's the difference? Might as well do it yourself. As I said to Tzemach Tzedek, the man arviach bezeh hasoif soif yiknet zucker kazeh mamish chulu darchei noam ksiv. That's what the Tzemach Tzedek says. So here you see the Tzemach Tzedek also using this svara on his own. Getting back to the Radbaz, so we left off. The Radbaz said that can't be with letter just die. Come to Radbaz and frak. Maybe there is a mucker, there is a yisait to say we should allow someone to die rather than cross these lines. It says l'chayr it's an erva, and l'chayr when it comes to even avizraya de arayas, we say yomus yoharek v'yaver. Where do we see this? From hahu dehela libaitina. So this is the Gemara, fairly well-known Gemara, I think it's in Hedron. Amar Yudah Marav. He was obsessed, preoccupied with a particular woman, and Rashi says, Tina literally means that his heart physically was messed up. They asked the doctor said the only solution to help him, only cure is to give him what he wants. Let him die. What if it's not tiboyle? What if she just presents herself aruma? Yomus v'altamei lefanei aruma. What if it's just a conversation through the fence? Yomus v'yitasapinim ma'achrei ageder. The Gemara goes on. We don't have time to mention all the pratim. So, and this is cited by the Beis Yosef in Yoreh Deah Siman Kufnan Zayin and the Siman of Yoharek V'Yaver. It's alluded to a little bit in the Shulchan Aruch as well. Niddah is an erva, and Harchakos is avizrayu, the niddah avizrayu darayas, so maybe Yamos Val Yisham Shana. Thomas Val Yisham Shana. So Rabbi, no. Like Kasha.
like Kashik Klau. Hasam, Ba'achayli Machmas Avera. This person wants an Avera, and that desire made him sick. Yamos. Here, two unrelated things. She happens to be sick, and now if he will break this union, he can help her. And this is also an interesting word. There's what one can elaborate on. Ties in a bit to what I discussed in the past about compensation for agmas nefesh. That some explain that agmas nefesh is subjective. It's not a physical given that one will react in that way. And if it's up to you, if it's really subjective, then it's up to you. Then it's your problem. You have to help yourself. Not mechai of others. So this is similar in that way. Whereas his problem that he wants is aveda. The question is how far and how much do we use this idea? The obvious question would be, what if hela liboitina for other avedas, for other yisurim? And today you have these mental health questions, or someone's mental health is so disturbed that we have to allow them to be mechal Shabbos for their well-being. So would we be matter that or not? On the one hand, you could be medayek that these Mekaydas seem to only be talking about arayas, mashma, that anything else, even if Halali Betina might be okay. But all the Mekaydas like these where they explain that it's his fault, it's his problem. So maybe there is room to apply it to other Avedas. I'm still interested. If anyone happens to come across any explicit discussions of this topic, I'd be very happy to hear. Also with Arayas itself, we can tie it into something we discussed recently about the Navi, who gives a tzivui, who says, to be over in Gili Arayas, especially in more normal cases where we see the tiyalas, right? So we discussed Lamash the Shailan Achreinim, if a woman sees that people's lives are in danger, if she can be mafka herself to save them, and if she does, is that considered an oinus, legabi her husband or not? So the Kli Chem does Mitzayin to the Shut Beis Yaakov from the Tufs, and he says, Gili Arayas is mutar l'tzayrech hatzalas Yisrael. What about this Gemara, Halali Beitina? That's Garam Batzmai, it's his fault, it's his problem. But if that's not how the scenario arose, then you can even be matzel through Be'ila. And this turns into a discussion in Achreinim about where someone Mechlal was irresponsible, and now they're in a sakana. Could you be Mechal Shabbos for them or not? How far are we willing to go with the idea that Garam La'atzmai? Okay, you have to be Mekatzer here. There's something else I wanted to mention, I guess we won't get into that right now. Back to the Radbaz. The Radbaz fears that even Chili She'em B'Sakana, I think it's fine. And such a Chash Rachik that he'll actually end up being Ba'ala. Number one, if she's that sick, then he has to help her stand up and lie down. Even if there's no Sakana, ain't no the Misavala. Why would someone be Misava to that? Number two, she's unwell, she'll say no, so maybe he disagrees a little bit with the Trumas Hadashim. She could say no, dafka if she's sick, and he's not going to force himself. Number three, even Goyim, especially back then, avoided a Nida, so certainly a Yid would also, if she's Nida, why would a Yid taka? I mean, it's a caution, all the Harchakos, I guess, but he's willing to use that here. And number four, again, Ein za darchei noam. Even if it's not a sakana, come on, you're not going to help her stand up and lie down, that will lead to a sakana. And he goes on in this vein. So just to firois the halacha, because we have been discussing this halacha, so you look in the Piskei Dinim, printed in the Sanach Tzedek. So the way he writes it is, well, first of all, the Mechaber writes, Aser, if she's chayla, the Ramah says, Yesh Eimrim, then if it's necessary, then fine. The Piskei Dinim in the Sanach Tzedek says, Aser le'liga ba, Batam, Lashon Trumas Hadashim, when he's sick, Ein Yitzrei Mesgaber Olav, but Lahapech, maybe yeah, Yesh Eimrim, the Im Ein Lo Mishi Yeshamshan Mutter, V'cheinogum Tzricha Harbe Lekach. Then he gets into these discussions about what if he's a doctor, what if he wants to feel her pulse, and weiter also in Tarak Halacha Lamaisa, Kshe Isha Chayla, so this is in Parak Arba Aser, and Chelek Aleph. So ideally, generally, it's usher for the husband to do anything. He has to hire someone to take care of her, even if it's a fairly high price. And he's mitzayin to the Radbaz, because even the Radbaz essentially acknowledged that in the beginning. The Radbaz was talking about people in hiding. But if, even for a lot of money, it's not possible, so if she really, really needs it, and like the Ramah says, so then he's allowed to do anything that will help her feel better, whether to heal her, or at least that she should feel a little better. Some say only if it's a sakana, that's a Trumas Hadashim. But of course, he's madgish, if she suddenly collapses, he says, don't start sitting there and thinking, yesh lachker, is it a sakana, is nicht a sakana, have a chenim sheisham shana. If maybe also, darchei, you have to use a little seichel, and if you don't see anyone right there, of course, help her first and ask questions later. Shabbos.